we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. I'm sure we'll have people coming into the Zoom room as we sort of get things started. Wanted to just welcome everybody to our TPA membership meeting for January. We have a really great agenda today, and we have a new format that we're trying out. We're super excited about seeing how our breakout sessions work today. So just a couple of quick housekeeping items to get us started. You'll notice Patrick isn't joined us yet today. Patrick is feeling a little under the weather. So Nancy, myself, Tony, will be sort of helping facilitate the meeting today. So we appreciate your patience as we don't have our star performer. So thank you for your grace today. We are recording the session, so we will follow up as we typically do with any of the meeting handouts and materials that are covered during the session today on Monday or Tuesday of next week, along with a link to the recorded session. So I just wanted to get us started on a couple of quick opening remarks. So first, we wanted to kind of acknowledge that since the beginning of the year, it feels like January took off like a bullet. And there's been a lot of activity, both in our organizations as we're all prepping for, or at least the residential providers are prepping for submission of performance-based contracting measures. But we also know there's a new administration, and there's been a lot of activity from the new administration. So we just wanted to make a couple quick comments that in terms of our strategy for communication, we recognize that information is moving very, very quickly, and that people are really getting inundated with lots of different messages. At the Provider Alliance, part of our commitment to all of you as members is that we want to make sure that we provide timely and relevant information, but we don't want to create too much noise for you or add to that noise. So what we're committed to doing is during our weekly updates, we'll provide anything that we've learned from the prior week, any changes, or kind of a play-by-play of what transpired the week before. And then anything that is newsworthy and breaking, we will obviously get that out as quickly as possible so that everybody has that information. But we just wanted to let you know, in case you don't hear a lot of that from us, it's intentional. It's because we want to make sure that we're kind of laser focused in using the most of our space that we get in your inboxes each day. So we appreciate all the questions that come in, and certainly if you have questions, reach out to information@provideralliance.org, and we'll be more than happy to try to track down answers for you or address any issues around confusion or things that we can. We have a pretty packed agenda today. So around performance-based contracting, we're going to talk, Kristen will be joining us at 9:30. There's been a lot of activity this week. So we had a family session this week that ODP hosted. There was a provider seminar earlier in the week. We are really interested in, kind of what the latest news is and giving members an opportunity to ask any questions that may come up in the course of the session today. So lots of activity in that front. We have Shay Tanis and Kaylee Day, who's joining us from the PA Tech Accelerator. I'm not going to steal any of their thunder, but most importantly, we wanted to just remind all members earlier this week, and again, you'll see this in our updates throughout the next couple of weeks. There are two summits, technology summits coming up, one in Philadelphia, one here in Pittsburgh, and there are sessions that are designated specifically for providers. So you should have received that message from ODP this week, inviting all providers to an accelerating technology component of those summits. So we're just encouraging everybody to register for those. They're going to be great opportunities to connect, to learn, and to sort of get any resources that are available to the provider community, to families, and anybody who's interested in leveraging technology for greater independence and better care. I also wanted to just mention we do have a couple of breakout sessions that we're going to be doing today. One is going to be on performance-based contracting. Tony is going to lead that for us. These breakout sessions will be from 10 to 10:30. We are, in terms of logistics for that, we are going to be posting a link around 9:45. And if you registered for the meeting today and we have your email, you'll be getting a message at 9:45 a.m. in your email that has the link to that new meeting. Once you toggle over to the new meeting, you'll be able to go into any one of the 3 breakouts that we have: performance-based contracting, compliance, and advocacy. On the note of compliance, there has been a lot of activity, as exciting as compliance can be sometimes, at the federal level. So there have been some changes to HIPAA and high tech, and some deadlines that came in December around how we manage reproductive health information, substance use disorder information, and a whole series of security standards that have come up. So we encourage everybody to stay tuned for the 10 to 10:30 breakout session. Diane Evans will be joining us to talk a little bit about some tools and resources that are available through her organization, Guarded Edge, for Provider Alliance members. So interesting new format for us. We're going to send a brief survey out after the meeting and see how this worked, and see if this is something that members want to continue as we move forward. So Nancy, I'm going to turn it over to you for a quick advocacy update and where we're at with our budget ask.
Thanks, Craig. You know, I have to begin by saying that TPA, as you can see from the logos on that letter, we are working lockstep with the other 5 provider groups in Pennsylvania. We have a unified message, not just for the governor's office, but for legislators as we move forward. We have continually shared information since September with the governor's office, with the budget secretary and his staff. Patrick meets on a very regular basis with Lindsay Malden. We've met a couple times now with the budget secretary himself. Most recently, we sent a copy of the wage study that many of you contributed to. And actually, it was Secretary Arkush and Secretary Munson who both wanted to see the results of the wage study. So that report was sent to them as soon as we had it. I hope everybody by now has taken a look at that infographic. That is what we are using when we'll be having meetings with legislators in the not too distant future. Probably by next week, you will be receiving talking points to go with that infographic. I guess we'll be talking a little bit more during our breakout session.
Yeah, and again, we just wanted to kind of highlight, this is the workforce study that the infographic that we published on our website, and we encourage everybody to visit our ACT page, and I'm sure, Nancy, I'm not going to steal any of your thunder around that. So with that, I'd really like to welcome Shay Tanis and Kaylee Day and thank them both for joining us from the Pennsylvania Technology Accelerator. We are really grateful for you guys coming and providing an update on all the exciting things that are happening right now. So I'll turn it over to you to take it from here.
Great. Can everyone hear me okay? Excellent. Give me just 1 second so I can see. All right. So thank you so much for having us, TPA, Craig, Patrick, for inviting us and giving this space. We really wanted to come and share some updates on the work we've been doing in Pennsylvania for the last six-ish months through the Pennsylvania Tech Accelerator, and highlight a few points where we really hope to have some provider participation and collaboration as we move through our activities. My name is Kaylee Day. I'm the project coordinator for the Pennsylvania Tech Accelerator project from the KU State of the States team. I come to this project after 13 years with the ARC chapter here in Denver, Colorado. And I also have an older brother with developmental disabilities and have been a part of the family advocacy and support community just about my whole life. I'm gonna let my project lead, Shay Tanis, introduce herself, and then we'll move on.
Hi all, Shay Tanis, project lead on this and principal investigator of the State of the States, where we look a lot at technology first advancement with the states across the nation. And so we're excited to bring this to Pennsylvania through the Technology Accelerator. So I'm gonna let Kaylee go through some slides and then I'll wrap it up.
Great. So first, we want to highlight our partners. Obviously, this project is funded by the Office of Developmental Programs and the Office of Long-Term Living using American Rescue Plan Act funds. And really the purpose is to, like the name says, accelerate and build and find some momentum in moving Pennsylvania towards becoming a technology-first state. Our partners are Temple University and TPA. And then, like I said, Shay and I come from the State of the States in Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. We're a longitudinal project of national significance that's been collecting data on state spending on disability services since 1982. So that's kind of our background, and we're based out of the KU Center on Disabilities. So quick overview of some of the activities that we're doing through our work in Pennsylvania. So we are running a technology accelerator steering committee. That steering committee is helping us to develop and draft technology first legislation. We're very excited about it and to be introducing in 2025. Shay will talk more about that later. We have a technology solutions specialist program. We will be developing a provider readiness evaluation. We'll be launching a statewide provider survey. And as Craig mentioned, the technology summit's coming up in March in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And I'm going to dive into each of these activities a little more. So starting with our steering committee, the purpose of the steering committee is to really inform and drive the work we are doing through the PA Tech Accelerator project. And like I said, help one, to assess we have what's called a technology first systems change model. And this steering committee is helping us to benchmark kind of where Pennsylvania is at through technology initiatives, efforts, state, cross-agency efforts. And that assessment is what is helping to draft and drive that technology first legislation. The steering committee is really thoughtfully designed. We really had certain areas of domains of living we wanted to hit through our representation. The most important of that being self-advocates and family members being involved and at the table. They've been some of our greatest contributors for sure. We have government representatives, including state legislators, obviously ODP and OLTL, Patton representing the education side of things, the broadband development and housing. We also have many representatives from advocacy agencies and other service providers. We have the ARC, Disability Rights, Parent to Parent, the DD Council, Centers for Independent Living, the Independent Living Council. We have our friend Mark Davis from PAR, Perform Care, the UPMC, and obviously Temple University and TechOp. So this steering committee is really helping to drive the work we're doing. So next we have the technology solution specialist. This is one of my favorite parts of the work we're doing because I love working with folks with disabilities and self-advocates. So these are 8 individuals who applied to become technology solution specialists. These are self-advocates and folks with lived experience who are now receiving paid leadership and technology training. Excuse me. And the hopes is that these are going to become really our champions, our advocates for this technology first legislation. Beyond that, just generally becoming technology advocates across Pennsylvania, providing peer mentorship on how to use technology and how to get it, becoming advocates and storytellers for technology access, and to hopefully, as the program wraps up, we build up their resume, move into becoming leaders in the technology and accessibility space across career sectors, whether that be in the tech industry, advocacy industry, policy industries. We just hope that these give skills to really open some doorways to pathways to employment for folks with disabilities who are really experts on how they can use and access technology. Like I said, we have 8 specialists and we have representation from 7 counties in Pennsylvania. We have Philadelphia, Chester, Bucks, Berks, Luzerne, Allegheny, and Mercer. We really did some targeted outreach. We tried to reach the kind of center of the state and get statewide representation, and just didn't see that come to fruition, but we are really happy with the group we have. They've already gotten started and have just really shown a passion, great skills, a diverse range of experiences and expertises that we're really excited to help build upon the skills and experience they already have. So next, we'll talk about the provider readiness evaluation. I've already seen quite a few names I recognize among the attendees of folks who joined us for our focus group. So glad to see you here. Thank you again for contributing to this piece of the project. And the goal of the readiness evaluation is really to create a tool that will help providers assess their capacity and their preparedness to implement change. And that's especially to implement change in in implementing technology solutions for consumers through their organizations. It's going to focus on supporting providers to build a culture of innovation through the different areas of infrastructure, capacity building, and curiosity, and that willingness to implement some change. We wanted to highlight a couple of the questions we worked through with our focus groups, our provider focus groups that were held throughout this fall, and give you some of the themes and answers that we saw coming from providers that kind of helped not only validate what we thought would be helpful in a readiness evaluation, but really to paint a clear picture of what providers are doing and what they need in Pennsylvania specifically. So we asked providers what structures and supports are needed to be in place to promote just a general culture of innovation within their agencies. We heard a resounding biggest answer we got was having leadership that's open to change, and that is championing the implementation that really, I don't want to say top down, but a cross agency approach that is, again, championed by leadership creates the environment for change and innovation. We heard a lot about addressing staff fears and misconceptions and resistance around technology solution. We all know we've heard those fears of, I don't want to be replaced by a robot. How does implementing technology allow me to do my job? So addressing those fears and barriers, having transparency when you're implementing a big change, making sure that, again, all those departments, that everyone's bought in and understands the why of why you're implementing change. Generally just promoting a culture to expect change and to take risks. I realize I have a typo there, task risks. But really just, not always operating on the status quo, not being, this is the way we've done things and this is how we're always going to do it, but being willing to innovate, being willing to take risks and try new programs in order to better serve your community. The second question, one of the other questions we asked was, what training or professional development do providers need in order to support the long-term adoption, maintenance, and innovation, specifically for technology solutions? We heard a lot of just general assistive technology training, what's available and how do we get it? There were a lot of providers who said, I don't even know, again, what's out there, what we may have access to. So kind of that AT 101. We heard about digital literacy. That's for both staff and for clients, just learning how to use technology and how to navigate safely and effectively. And that training really needs to include the hands-on device training, getting devices in the hands of DSPs so they know what they're doing so they can support clients in accessing that as well. And that needs to include culturally and linguistically competent training for those DSPs. Again, addressing those fears of technology, of privacy concerns with staff and families, and really highlighting the value and benefits of using technology, promoting autonomy and independence, meeting client goals, using those, person-centered ideas. And then, of course, repair and maintenance. I think that's something we all struggle with, maintaining your technology, troubleshooting when things go wrong, that kind of, again, what is important to the long-term adoption and resiliency around technology is just getting through the bumps and the problems. So one of the first asks we have for you all today is that as we move into the phase of developing this readiness assessment, we are looking for 6 agencies to pilot this tool sometime in this spring. And so if you are interested, if you, especially if you participated in a focus group and would like to now test out and pilot the tool, provide feedback, please reach out to me. My email is kayleeday@ku.edu, and we would love to gather some volunteers who are willing to test this out for us before it is delivered with a bow on it to ODP for their deployment. And with that, I'll hand it over to Shay.
Yeah, thanks, Kaylee. Kaylee covered a couple of our deliverables and things we were working on through this project that we were really excited for, but much of what we are doing is based on our technology first systems change model, which we've been using across the nation and working on since about 2007. We were involved in the first launch of Technology First in Ohio and have been tracking the data and implementation of the promising practices across the nation since that time. So we've developed a systems change model that is very much based on implementation science and movement and change in health and human services. And really what we are looking at is implementing a lot of different pieces of that systems change model through the activities of the technology accelerator. So if you're unfamiliar with the systems change model, just to be familiar, the framework of systems change is really where we consider technology first in the discussion of support options available to people with disabilities and their families. And we really move beyond person-centered and person-directed approaches to promote meaningful participation, inclusion, self-determination, quality of life. And so as we look at our larger systems change model, many of the things that we are doing are component elements of that model. Understanding provider access, knowing capacity building needs, and part of that is also looking at state legislation. So one of the things we know after doing our national surveys across states, 26 of which have really put forth technology first innovations, is that technology first states really identify when they have some legislation and some kind of resource behind the activities that they are performing. So many of our states have looked towards creating some legislation to give teeth to the activities and sustainability. So that is one of the things that we are looking at through this project, is trying to build out a bill that can be applied and or introduced at the right time, as we know. But we have that coalition of stakeholders that are part of the steering committee that represent across agencies for really building a coalition. Some of the pieces that we know have been successful and some of the things identified by the steering committee to be introduced or integrated into this bill is looking at harmonization and modernization of some of our policies to allow for flexible and agile practices. We know that technology solutions evolve and adapt over time, and we want to build policies that allow people to integrate and to advance those technologies, not become barriers to adoption and acquisition. We know that there has to be some collaboration across agencies in order to see this throughout the lifespan, starting from early intervention all the way to aging. We're excited to, as a project, be working with the National Association of State Directors and Advancing States to look at that integration across the nation of aging and disability and technology advancements. We know that there needs to be engagement and training, and that goes beyond just acquisition. That goes into what we consider and term technology resilience and agility. So being able to adapt to technologies and know how to problem solve when problems occur. We want to look at expanding and looking at braided and blended funding that is already occurring across many states. Investments in hybrid models of care through innovation, and accountability of accessibility products and services, which we know there's a lot of attention around procurement for accessibility. And then finally, impact measurement and benchmarking. We have already, through our team at the state level, looked at the benchmarking, evaluated the state, and established what is our baseline for progress over time. Kaylee, next slide, please. As you heard, and we're excited that Craig introduced to you, we do have Temple University is leading what are technology summits. We're excited that our project and our team is able to have 3 pieces, having a strand that we're going to focus on what is technology, and I'll show those in a minute. Thanks, Kaylee, but I'll go back. But we wanted to help clarify, just so you know, in the event that the communication gets a little challenging, there are two technology summits that are intended to be duplications. So you really only need to go to one, but we encourage you to come to both if you'd like. The first one is in Philadelphia, and in that one's the week of March 6th, and the second one is the following week, which is in Pittsburgh on March 13th. So I will talk about our strands, which are including the providers, which are coming next. So we are responsible for 3 of the many wonderful strands that are being introduced and going through the technology summits. We're going to highlight those technology specialists, solution specialists, because we truly do believe that they are the drivers of innovation, and those are the ones who are going to be creating the technologies of tomorrow. We're going to talk about leveling up our accelerator, looking at each of the component elements and how we move forward, or how the state moves forward in becoming a technology first state. So all those component elements of systems change. And that's really where we want to integrate the providers. The providers are such a critical piece to seeing technology advance. And so we're excited that TPA will be represented on those panels in presenting what is the view and perspective of providers, as there are so many wonderful things that you all are doing right now. I did see in the chat some folks doing their open houses of technology sites. And then we're going to finalize with having some discussions around what that technology first bill and legislation could look like in the future, getting that more honed in so that when that comes to the time of introduction, everybody understands what the purpose and goals of it are to advance it through. Kaylee, next slide, please. And then finally, we're going to wrap up by talking about the statewide provider survey. This is a baseline. We know we need data to understand where to move forward, and that'll be rolling out in the next month. To you all, we're going to look at knowledge of technology-related services and supports, methods for addressing technology-related supports and services, and the development of what are person-directed planning, implementation barriers, and resources. Kaylee, next slide. So you will see this coming out. We will launch it, and you will be hearing from us about getting that data, because it's critical to advancing your practices. So that's all we have. We really appreciate the opportunity to join you today. Please do contact us if you have any questions. And thanks again. We appreciate it, Greg. And I see Kristen is on.
Yes, thank you so much, Shay and Kaylee. We really appreciate you taking some time to join us and talk about this great stuff. So super excited to see you in Pittsburgh. So I'll look forward. I'll track you down on the Carlo campus.
Perfect.
So we're going to move on. I'm so happy to let you know, see that Kristen has joined us. We're very grateful that she has taken the time today to to meet with our members and to talk a little bit about where we are with performance-based contracting. Nancy, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then we'll jump into Kristen's presentation.
Well, I know that Kristen will have a very informative webinar. I just wanted to let all of our members know that yesterday, ODP hosted a informational webinar for individuals and families. As a family member, I thank Kristen very much. I thought it was very, very well done in language that families really could begin to understand, even though this is a complex topic. The other thing is for providers to know is that families are beginning to receive letters, families and individuals receiving letters from AEs. So that, again, this is information that they will have in their hands. I thought the information, one of my children received it this past week, thought the information was good. I think also providers need to be ready, because I think that you're going to start to get questions from families as they receive, more and more information. So without further ado, Kristen, turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Nancy, and I'm glad you were able to join the session yesterday. That is posted. I actually have in the slide deck I put together, I think I put the link for it. If I didn't, it's on the same PBC resource page that's available to everyone. And I think we'll see if we need to do another live one based on the letters that went out. So just to give a little background, as part of the agreement, the federal agreement that was approved with the B4, we obviously had an obligation, and we would have done it anyway, to inform individuals and families of the change to selective contracting as of January 1st. So put together some materials trying to, explain a complicated concept as simply as possible. We did design, there's an infographic for families, there's an FAQ for individuals and families that we worked on, and we worked with the Family Network to try to keep it to kind of the basics about what performance-based contracting is and isn't. So that is all available. That's all up on that same resource page if people have an interest in seeing that. And you can certainly, if you are interested, view the recorded. Actually, I don't know if the recorded family session is live yet, but it will be shortly if it isn't. If you just want to see some of the, get a sense of the kinds of questions that people were asking and the flavor of how we were presenting it to individuals and families, that is all out there and might be helpful for you. But let's jump into it here, and I do want to start with performance-based contracting. Just some general updates. As you all know, it did become effective January 1st. We did send out an announcement alerting, potential providers, provider community, that anyone not enrolled as a residential provider as of January 1st, that enrollment is closed, that we are not accepting enrollment as of January 1st. That certainly generated, some activity as that went out. But I think probably that will quiet over time here as providers understand the other. You certainly still enroll to provide non-residential services, but not residential services. I think probably everybody here is aware we've got, all the updated documents based on some of the changes we made between option 1 for data submission and now. We did record for any providers who were unable to attend the live session that we did on, was it Tuesday? Or Wednesday, I guess. We did a session that is just geared for residential providers for the actual data submission. That recording is posted. It doesn't get into any of the actual measures, none of that. It's literally just here's what the app, the data submission tool looks like. Here are some tips for, preparing for it. Here's how you do your file naming. So it is a very technical webinar. I would advise anybody who is doing data submission for this, I would advise that you review that, or whoever is going to be actually putting things together, review that recording if they didn't attend live, and then be prepared. We've got these 4 different virtual office hour sessions. There is no presentation that will occur at these. These are literally office hours. So you're going to have, some of our clinical team there. You'll have somebody who knows Question Pro. You'll have all of the subject matter experts for any technical questions you have about the submission, the data and documentation submission. So 4 different opportunities for that. Again, no presentation, just time to answer specific questions. And I've got here the individual family informational webinar, which Nancy led us right into talking about, so that you're aware that that has occurred. I want to say we had about 130 attendees for this family session, which is about typical for a lot of the sessions that we do for individuals and families. So not massive attendance, but definitely, some decent attendance, trying to make sure that our individuals and families understand what is and isn't occurring with performance-based contracting. All right, next one. Another thing I do want to point out, again, if anybody, any residential providers didn't participate in that informational session, the other thing that we went over in that, it was the the data's collection or the request for the pay for performance. So we did cover that in that informational session on the 29th. Those timeframes correspond exactly. Data submission for PBC, data submission for the pay for performance correspond. We gave some tips in terms of how, for providers who will be submitting for pay for performance, how to kind of coordinate that with the data submission. So again, I think if you're not concerned about the actual data submission process, at a minimum, I'd sort of fast forward to the section on pay for performance. But we will be publishing the PDFs for the data, for the request forms for the pay for performance. So you will have those in advance as well. Other thing you should be aware of, and the email will go out later today to providers, but you've got the live link here. We did post data for the incident management, the 3 incident management measures. That's posted, that is live right now. And then we will post probably early mid to midweek. We'll be posting the follow-up from hospitalization data as well. And then the HRS data will probably follow that. So we are posting all of that data. This is on a page that you have to log into as a provider. So it is not publicly available on my ODP. We will also pull that down on February 15th. So it'll be up there for you to view and grab, but it is not open to the general public, and it will not be left there indefinitely. But this is not unlike the last time we published, where we just published MPIs that met the measure. This will be the actual data. And this one's particularly important, that follow-up from hospitalization data. I think we shared with you, some of the claims lags on that were extraordinary. And we had some real oddities in terms of, we actually experienced some inpatient hospitalizations for people who had Medicaid that did not appear in claims. Like, it appears that the hospital system did not bill for inpatient care this far out. So this is where you've got the opportunity to take a look at that and provide us with the data at the front end of this process if you had individuals that had psychiatric inpatient stays. So that will be up and posted for you to take a look at and help you think about your which tier you plan to submit your data for. And then just the reminder, we've got all these different resources for you. We've got the resources that referenced for individuals and families, so that you know what the messaging is to them as well, which would probably be important. We do keep updating those FAQs. So if you have questions, I would start there instead of hitting the mailbox, because we really have continued to pool those questions and build that body of responses. So check there. And if it's not answered, then certainly use the mailbox. We do plan on continuing to be very responsive to those questions. All right, next one, just a reminder here, just a guidance, and particularly since we now have some of the data is live, and we'll keep adding to that, the data that we pull, to think about which measures are yes, no, sort of critical measures to meet, that will will be determinative in terms of those tiers. So this is a nice guide to help anybody who's not sure which tier that they should be submitting their data for. All right, and then let's move to supports coordination. Just to give you a sense of where we are, this timeline, this is the initial timeline that we published for supports coordination. So we are still in the phase here. We've got we did get feedback from some the associations, from Isaac members, and from our strategic thinking group for supports coordination on the draft measures. We did sort of a soft release before we put that out for formal public comment. We are in the final stages of preparing those documents. They're all going to begin internal review, executive review at DHS, and we are on target for all of those documents being published for public comment in April so that we could submit those to CMS in July for that January 26th implementation. So go ahead to the next one, and I can, you've got the list of the different documents that we're preparing. So this one is a little bit different than residential in that we are including a state plan service, so something that is not included in the waivers. Our supports coordination for ODP, anybody enrolled in a waiver, that is paid. The supports coordination is a waiver benefit under the 1915C. But we have about 20,000 individuals on the waiting list who get targeted supports management. So they're Medicaid eligible. They're not enrolled in a waiver. Their supports coordination is actually paid through a state plan service called Targeted Supports Management. And so our B4 will be governing both our 3 IDA waivers and that state plan service. So these documents are going to look a little bit different than they looked for residential, which was just under the B4. Sorry, under the 1915C, our waivers. This 1915 B4 will govern state plan services and waiver services. So a little bit different there. It will not govern base services. We're not applying it to base services. We do not have that many individuals who are not Medicaid eligible. So that's going to be a small group that will stay on that state only and will not be managed through a B4 arrangement. But we'll have the same, an implementation guide that's going to look very familiar for people who have reviewed the one for residential. There will be one for supports coordination, and then a really substantial change that we definitely want feedback on through this public comment period is we are going to be making a significant change we're proposing a very significant change in how we pay for supports coordination. So we are going to be proposing that, for select supports coordination organizations that we move away from that 15-minute unit and move to a per member per month arrangement. So this, very, very significant change, I think, for our system. This is an area that we were going to want a lot of feedback. This is obviously, we've got to get this right. We can see that within supports coordination, the way we pay for 15-minute unit, or the way we pay, which is 15-minute units, is driving some practice that is not benefiting individuals. It is not benefiting the overall system. We think that we can, take this opportunity with performance-based contracting to really start aligning payment with the kinds of outcomes that we want. So please, I would ask, supports coordination impacts everyone and everything in our system, that even if you're not an SEO, if you're not going to be directly impacted by, changes in this payment structure and changes in the way we're approaching this, that getting all of that stakeholder feedback is going to be really important to get this right. So please take a look when we get that out in April, because there's some pretty significant shifts in how we're going to be doing business here. All right, next one. I think I just have one more. Last thing here, and I don't have the updated enrollment numbers. I should have these probably by the end of the day, but I didn't have them this morning. So as of December 1st, we had already enrolled about 1,900 individuals. That number is definitely quite a bit higher than that, with 2 months of additional data, but I don't have that assembled for you today. But just to kind of let you know where we are with the multi-year growth strategy, we've got the protocols in place. We have AEs that are in process of their readiness review. So, one that had a full package submission. The rest are sort of in preparatory stages, so that we're going to be reviewing those shortly to be allowing counties to start managing more to budget. Really productive sessions with the administrative entities to be shifting the way that we manage our waiting list, and already from some of that preliminary work. So from the big initiatives that were included in the budget, from some of this preliminary work with counties, from ODP, frankly, taking a harder, stronger stance in terms of waiver capacity management. I will tell you, we have taken some enforcement action where in administrative entities where we have had concerns about how the management of waiver capacity is occurring. So kind of all of these activities have really resulted in quite a bit of movement already. And I am thrilled to tell you today that we have had a 19% decrease in the adult emergency waiting list just since the governor's announcement 1 year ago. So kudos. And the other thing I would say here is the compensation survey that the associations published, thank you all for submitting your data to this. This stuff is so critical in terms of policymakers understanding what is occurring. I know that you get surveyed a lot. I know these surveys are no joke to be completing, but thank you. This kind of data is so critical. So 14% vacancy rate for DSPs is the lowest vacancy rate that we have seen since 2015, which is just incredible. And I think, between what we could see in terms of wage movement, what we can see in terms of vacancy, I think if there's any question about what the rate increases go to, that should be resolved by those survey data. And to put in context here, that as providers, you were able to reduce vacancy rate to 14% while we were adding this many people to waiver enrollment is really remarkable. And I think it speaks to the power of that investment in our system. And I think that's a great story to tell. I know you were all out doing advocacy around this. And these are some great data points to be sharing in terms of that advocacy, and just kudos. I know this has just been a tremendous lift in a context where we're still, recovering from the pandemic, and the system continues to rapidly change and evolve. So just, really congrats and job well done. This is great news. So the other kind of data point here that we want to be talking about, this is called the growth strategy on purpose, because part of this strategy is to grow the program large enough so that we're picking people up just through natural turnover. And I have been since I have been deputy, have been watching this, looking to get this, our system past 40,000 people. I have bigger ambitions than that in terms of making sure that we've got enough capacity to be getting to all of those individuals waiting for services. But 40,000 was a big marker, a big milestone, and we finally surpassed that. So as of the end of January here, we are now at a capacity that has been allocated to counties at 41,555 individuals. So again, just, extraordinary. That represents an 8% growth in this short period of time. And just incredible news. I know there are so many individuals and families that have been in really desperate situations. We have been able to get them enrolled in waivers, and providers have been able to get them services. I know we're still not getting all of the services to everyone who's enrolled, and we've still got a ways to go there, but we have definitely provided a lot of relief to a lot of people this way. So well done. All right, Nancy, that's it. I am happy to take questions or comments. And if I missed anything people wanted updates on, I'm happy to do that as well.
Greg, I think we have some questions from some people.
Yeah, there's a few questions in the Q&A. Gary asks about the ODP is reporting nearly 2,000 additional people receiving waivers. Nothing noting that the receiving a waiver, the appropriate amount of service and supports are not the same thing. So does the department have data on the gap between receiving the waiver and receiving the needed services?
We actually don't. We have no clean way to collect this, which has been, I think, frustrating for everyone, particularly, I think the advocacy community who gets the calls and would like to kind of, so there's the waiting list for enrollment in the waivers, and then there's the people who have the waiver that can't get the service, right? Now, one of the things that was in the is in the access rule would require us to actually have these kind of data. Currently, we have no way to collect or track this. So how we typically approach this is by looking at authorization against utilization and looking at that over time. That's an approximation. We published, if you take a look at the Isaacs Provider Performance Subcommittee, those are data that we review in there. I'm trying to remember which month we reviewed that, but those data are available from that subcommittee, and it's the closest thing we have to be able to answer that question. Which while I am talking about this, I know on the provider session on performance-based contracting the other day, we had a lot of questions about the Trump administration's executive orders and what we're doing in terms of both the freeze, the rescinding of the freeze, the other orders related to DEI. And so I will just generally say here, obviously the Shapiro administration, we are analyzing and looking at the implications for Pennsylvania related to all of that. And at this point, there are no changes or no decisions that have been made. And if and when there are any things that we need to be communicating that impact service delivery, payment, we will certainly communicate those. But at this point, there are no changes. At this point, there is no impact on individual services. There is no impact on our ability to continue paying providers.
We do have another question about the IM data that was posted on MyODP. If a provider or a notices an error, or they believe there's some error, what's the best way to get that information to ODP?
PBC mailbox. Yeah.
Okay. Super.
Yep.
We have a question about performance-based contracting for supports coordination organizations. Is the NCQA accreditation being considered to be added as one of the allowable accreditations?
So this is a space where we would love some feedback. This was on the strategic thinking group. There was a lot of discussion about accreditation and whether or not we thought that accreditation would improve the overall quality of our SCOs. So you can see we're doing a lot of data collection. We're asking for reporting related to this. At this point, there's been no determination that we don't even have an inclination related to whether or not we would be doing that. So definitely a space where we would love to hear from stakeholders on their experience related to any of the credentialing, whether it's organizational credentialing or some of the individual professional credentials that we put out there. So please, this is space that we need some public comment on.
Okay. We did have a question or a couple questions about requests to post the link to the IM data. Again, we appreciate
it's in the slide deck, which you can share.
Perfect. Yeah, I was just going to say
you'll get emails. You'll also receive emails related to that.
We'll certainly make sure to get that out to everybody so that they have those links right after the session.
Okay. See, there's a question about new rates for residential tiers. We are not the only rates that would be published are supports coordination. So we will be publishing those as proposed taking public comment with the idea that those would be published in final for January 1, 26 implementation, but no other rates are being republished.
We did have a question about any updates on the vendor for processing the data.
Still working through our procurement process. This is, I will refrain from further comment, but this has been, as you all know, I imagine, a very protracted procurement process. So we're still working on it.
Okay. And any insights you can share on, we're going to have Nancy talk a little bit about some of the work the government and advocacy team is doing with TPA around the budget. Anything you can comment on about the forthcoming budget?
There is nothing I can comment on. I think we'll all be watching the governor's announcement, his budget address on Tuesday, but I have nothing I can comment on.
And if supports coordination organizations want to submit some sort of comment, what's the best way to do that?
I mean, at this point, I would hold your comments until the formal public comment period, because we're already, those documents are gone. Like we're moving those through the executive review process within the Commonwealth. But there will be a public comment period. It will be at least 30 days. We should be able to actually, we're hoping to actually be able to allow 45 days for that. And, certainly, I think if there are other comments related, we will be proposing the accreditation. I know there was one of the primary comments that we got during this sort of soft release of it was a lot of concern about the 90% referral acceptance. That did change. We will not be publishing that at 90%. We did get a lot of feedback, particularly in the southeastern part of the state. There's a lot of, we have a couple of SEOs, one that is definitely closing its doors. It has a substantial number of individuals. We also have another county that's divesting of their supports coordination. So just in light of some of these geographic areas that are going to be highly impacted by SEO change that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with performance-based contracting, we did lower that standard in what we're putting out for public comment. So that, hopefully that gives everyone some relief. I know there was a lot of consternation about that, particularly in the geographic areas where we're seeing a lot of flux right now. But yeah, for now, I would hold those comments. The other thing I would say is if you please know who the folks are on the strategic thinking group and on Isaac. There is always conversation in those groups about this, but you will have the opportunity during that the formal public comment period to submit any additional comments.
Excellent. And we appreciate you taking the time today, Kristen. One thing we'll call out, since I'm not sure how often you get to hear good feedback, but we had a comment in the chat or the Q&A that said that they felt the webinar on Tuesday was very thorough, concise, and helpful. So thank you for that.
Okay, great. So yeah, and I think for teams who are doing this, I would advise it's why we posted it. Go back to it. There's between the technical aspect of actually what you're submitting and how you're submitting it. There is Question Pro is not it can be a little bit clunky. And there's some really good tips for kind of how you navigate Question Pro that are in there as well. And yes, 2 of 3 for IM. That became a composite measure after that first round. That was one of the changes that we made. It's a composite measure now.
Excellent. Well, thank you again so much for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time. For everybody else, I did post a link in our chat for our breakout sessions. So we'll be running breakout sessions from 10 to 10:30. You should receive an email if you've registered for the meeting. If you can't catch the link, we're going to toggle over to the breakout meeting in just a second here. Just as a quick note, our next meeting will be February 21st. Hopefully, I'm sure Patrick will be back by then and we'll be back in the normal space. So again, we appreciate everybody taking the time today, and thank you for your patience as we work through the session. So hope to see you all in just a few minutes. Thank you.